Hello, Abe. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
We're closing in on Election Day, a little under 3 weeks from now. How are you feeling?
Really great. I mean, this time last year, I hadn't even announced my campaign for Attorney General. I announced on November 1st, actually, and it's been a rocket ship. So, the people of Arizona, they want some change, and they're hopeful. They're hopeful for the future, and this is why I'm so excited, because my candidacy is bringing out so many unique, different factions, non-traditional Republicans like Hispanics, Black Americans, Asian Americans. It's really a unique blend right now, and I think we recognize that our country and our future is on the line right now this November.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about your background and family story? What does it mean to be a first-generation American?
Absolutely. Well, it means everything, because I know what's at stake. If we lose our country, there's nowhere else to go. And my family background, it's quite beautiful, typical American dream story, actually. My parents came from Syria 30 some odd years ago, and I was born in Chicago, unfortunately, but they came here with no education, no money. We were on food stamps at one point, but they had the entrepreneurial spirit. But it's kind of funny. My dad, he randomly won the lottery, and it was like $50,000. So it wasn't necessarily life-changing, but in some ways it was, because it included a stay at the Scottsdale Princess Resort when it first opened back in January of 1996. And
wow.
If you could imagine Chicago in January, then landing at Sky Harbor in Phoenix, they looked at each other and they said, wow, we found the Middle East of America. So it was an easy decision for them to move out here. And I grew up in North Scottsdale, Cave Creek. My sister, she married an NBA champion, Jeff Ayers, who played with James Harden at ASU. Jeff won a championship at the Spurs. My brother's successful real estate investor in Paradise Valley, and it's all around true American dream. And it's quite beautiful to see how in one generation we can go from being on food stamps to not knowing English, and then to have their son being the future Attorney General of Arizona. It's a big testament to our country and the values we stand for. And my background, I'm a former prosecutor at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. And over there, my jurisdiction was downtown Phoenix. So I dealt with a lot of the crime, a lot of the homeless, a lot of the mental illness. And then besides just being a prosecutor, I'm also a former Army captain and intelligence officer. And I was in Saudi Arabia on my deployment for 14 months. And I got back in September of 2021. And out there is really interesting. Saudi Arabia is a complicated country, right? I mean, this is the biggest purchaser of all military training and sales in the world. With the United States, $130 billion contract, but we were tasked to train the Saudis' domestic security forces, as well as sending them to the United States for training. So it was a big task, and I came back here in September of 2021, and the reason why I decided to run is because I no longer recognize our country, and I'm not satisfied with the direction it's headed in.
An amazing story and a testament to the American dream, with
Absolutely.
Your family coming over and you becoming so successful right now. With regards to your education, can you tell us about your time in law school and what made you want to become a lawyer in the first place?
Absolutely. So, I went to Arizona State University for undergrad, and then I became a turncoat and went down to University of Arizona down in Tucson for law school. And I wanted to serve. I've always wanted to do that. I mean, I was always into Law and Order on TV. That's why I became a prosecutor, actually. I said that in my first interview when I was interviewing at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. I think some people got a chuckle out of it. But, when you're a prosecutor, when you're an attorney, you're actually going in and you're fighting for justice, right? Not necessarily for the outcome of just winning. It's about justice for those victims, and about putting bad guys behind bars. It's really, I could sleep with myself at night. I could, in the sense that I'm at ease. I know that we ultimately we made the community safer. And I think that's what Arizonans want. And anybody who's in the public service, that should be their ultimate goal, is to make our community safer. So being a prosecutor, not just being a lawyer, being a prosecutor is different, because it's a different set of standards, different set of ethical standards as well. And I'm very proud of my time in the courtroom and all the trials I've conducted, and upholding victims' rights and putting bad guys behind bars.
Okay. What made you want to run for Attorney General?
It's when I got back here from my Army deployment in September of 2021. I don't say this to be hyperbolic, but in many ways I no longer recognize our country. When you have the government shutting down churches, schools, small businesses, allowing our loved ones to die alone. And when I got back here, you see this record inflation, the worst since World War II. You see this, I was overseas and I saw peace in the Middle East, right? I saw the Abraham Accords. And now we have a war in Europe, and we have a wide open southern border that's bringing in fentanyl and 250,000 illegal immigrant border crossers every single month. It's unsustainable. And then we have the record number of crime that we've never seen since 1990 levels. And it's all done because of democratic policies that have failed us. And I just stand for common sense. And the reason why I decided to run at my age is because I've got the energy. I think the same old guard who got us into this mess aren't going to be the ones who get us out of it. So it's time for some fresh blood in there. And that's why I'm so excited that we won the primary by a substantial margin. It was a very decisive win. And we're feeling really good about the general election. But I'm optimistic because I think so many people around the country, they're so focused on what happens in Arizona. I mean, Arizona's a border state where so much have happened in Arizona during the election. And they're looking to Arizona for the future. And if we win, we give hope for the rest of the country, and that's what I'm so excited about.
You mentioned your age. The candidate running against you is nearly 20 years older than you. What do you say to those who think you might be too young for the job?
Well, I'm not too young to serve my country in uniform overseas. And to be quite frank, my opponent has never practiced law, which is quite shocking. She's a professor of environmentalism at ASU. She has never stepped foot in a courtroom. She's never had a client. She doesn't know the law. And it's quite amazing to see. So, I tell folks the reason why we're winning such a broad coalition of older Americans, younger Americans, they care about whether you're smart and if you have passion behind you, and if you've got a backbone. And, my opponent, she's a chameleon. She is known to be, she hires police haters. I've been endorsed by every single law enforcement organization in this state, every single one of them. So certainly they don't think that my age is a problem. And, I'm in the military, right? You're asked to serve your country and defend it no matter what your age. And it's usually the youth who are the ones doing it. So, I think it's the young people who are going to save our country right now.
Okay, shifting gears. What do you think the biggest issue facing Arizona is, and what would you do as Attorney General to help solve that issue?
Right now, it's our wide open border that's been, completely opened by the Biden administration. Just 2 years ago, we had record numbers of the least amount of border crossers in history. It was about 20 to 30,000 a month. Now it's about 250,000. How did that happen in such a short amount of time? It's because the Biden administration has advertised to the world that they're not going to be enforcing their laws. So what I'm going to do as Attorney General about this, and I've said this from day one of my campaign, I'm going to label the drug cartels as terrorist organizations, working with the legislature to do that. And with that designation, there's actually enhanced sentencing on them. So instead of just getting 5 years for drug smuggling, they might be getting 10 or 15 years. But Arizona, under current Arizona law, we have that ability to classify terrorist organizations, but we just defer to the federal government on what that definition is. But I'll tell you, the federal government has been politicized, especially the State Department. When I was serving overseas in the Middle East with the Army, with the Yemen Houthi rebels who are firing missiles at us, they were delisted by the Biden administration as terrorist organizations. And that's primarily the reason why Saudi Arabia is not very happy with Joe Biden right now. But Arizona knows what the threat is, and the threat is the cartels who are the narco-terrorists at our southern border. So we're going to get a lot more aggressive with them, seize their assets, and we have to make sure that the invasion declaration is going to be also enforced as well.
Okay, elections have been a hot topic amongst Arizona voters. If a controversy like which occurred in the 2020 election were to happen again, how would your treatment differ from that of the current administration?
Well, I would follow the law. I think ultimately, as Attorney General, it's a sign of maturity to know what your limitations are in the office. And our elections, unfortunately, there's no confidence. There's very little confidence in them right now. Look what we just witnessed today. Secretary of State Kate Hobbs has run an incompetent election. She just has admitted that 6,000 voters did not receive the correct ballots, right? This is where I think we have to understand that it's okay to say that we want our elections to be better. If you look back in 2000 with Bush v. Gore, after that whole debacle, and that took a month and a half to resolve, what did Florida do? They said we had a problem, we're going to fix it, and now they get the results on the same day. And I think it's okay to say that we want free, fair, and competent elections. And as Attorney General, I understand my role, and it's important to know that working with the legislature, working with the governor to make sure that good laws are passed, because ultimately I'm tasked to enforce them. So we're going to make sure our elections are secure. In the private sector, when people run incompetent plans, they get fired. And I think that we need to hold our government officials that same standard. So going forward, I think Arizona will have a bulletproof election system.
Moving beyond the topic of elections, how else might you differentiate yourself from the current administration?
Well, I think besides just my personality, I think it's having that communication ability. I reach out to a broad demographic. There's a reason why we're capturing Hispanics, we're capturing minorities, and the youth as well. And if you look at law enforcement has endorsed my campaign because they know I will always have their backs. As a person in the military, I get thanked for my military service all the time. And our law enforcement officers, they need to be thanked for their service. Too often they're going to the streets of war every single day without the backing of the city council, without the backing of the city mayors. But I want them to know that when I'm Attorney General, I will always have their backs because they have a thankless job right now. I want to bring back that spirit after 9/11. We rally behind our first responders, our law enforcement, and we need to make sure we do that. So that's one area that I'm going to focus on heavily is building that trust back with our law enforcement officers, with the AG's office particularly.
Okay. In late September, early October, current Maricopa County attorney explained that she did not believe that the 15-week abortion ban recently instated allows for people obtaining abortions to be prosecuted, and that it only allows for charges to be brought up against those providing abortions. How do you interpret the current Arizona abortion laws on the books?
So I think it's important to understand different roles, what the county attorney's role is and the attorney general's role is. As attorney general, I'm tasked to uphold the law. As a county attorney in regards to this, they're the ones who are going to be enforcing the law actually. So with me upholding the law, you're looking at, abortion, reasonable people can disagree, right? I mean, I think some people want 15 weeks, some people want 10 weeks, some people, want 39 weeks up until after birth. I think that's an extreme position, but if you look at what's happening as Attorney General, I am tasked to enforce the law as it is written, not as I wish it to be. And I think that's the critical difference between my opponent and myself. I mean, she has stated that she wants to insert her personal beliefs into that role. And I think that's dangerous. Ultimately, the legislature passes the law and it's signed by the governor, which means that it's passed by the people. Right? The legislators are the people's representatives. So I understand my role. And as Attorney General, I'm going to be tasked to uphold the laws of the legislature. And if you saw, the controversy arises, the 15-week restriction that was passed and signed in March, and that there was a provision that said if Roe v. Wade is overturned, the pre-Roe law takes effect. It's black and white, it's pretty clear, but we're going to wait until the courts litigate it out. Good lawyers can argue both sides, but I happen to agree with this current administration's position on it. If the legislature wants to have a special session and change it, it's up to their purview, and I will enforce whatever laws that they pass.
Okay. When interpreting the law, what would you say your interpretive judicial perspective is? Do you have any legal minds that you look up to?
Well, I think the originalism, I think that's really important, but it's particularly with statutes in Arizona, which a lot of it's going to be based off of. It's looking at the letter of the law, and it's black, and a lot of it will be black and white. And I think that's where you take away your own interpretation of it and read what the text actually says. In regards to the U.S. Constitution, a lot of it, originalism, will go into what the founding fathers, meaning and intent was at the time, and I think that's important too. Some legal minds, obviously Justice Scalia is the most famous one that, and Justice Clarence Thomas as well. They're legal geniuses and legal minds have influenced my life. But, I think it's, having your life's perspective also is important as well when you're going into that office. Because you have to understand, I'm not running to be a judge. I'm running to be Attorney General. So there is a portion of it where, my life experience goes into knowing what laws to tackle, what ones that we're going to be aggressive on. And I think that's what's also a key difference between my opponent and myself is, I see the sense of urgency that we're losing our country so quickly because of, radical leftist policies. And I want to make sure that these laws are actually enforced. I mean, they're the ones who are openly going against what the laws are written. They want to end cash bail. They want to put a stop to the death penalty. Right? This is they want to release criminals back on the streets. Now, I want criminals back in jail where they belong, not on the streets. And that's where ultimately us conservatives, we have to own that mantra is that I'm not ashamed to be a conservative. I'm not ashamed to be common sense. They're the ones who have these policies that have destroyed cities all across the country. San Francisco, Chicago, New York. Every single city that's enacted democratic policies has turned those cities into less safe Gotham cities, and everybody's fleeing from them, coming to other cities. So I think we have to prevent that from happening here.
Okay. What would it mean to you if you were to win the race for Attorney General?
I think it gives a lot of hope. And I say that I'll be the youngest Attorney General since Bill Clinton. I'll be the first, son of Syrian immigrants Attorney General. I think there's a lot of optimism right now. And I think so often the media and the ruling class, they had this vision of the Republicans being the party of old, racist, angry people. And I'm a happy warrior. Ultimately, I'm living in the best of times. I'm so blessed to be given this opportunity to fight for Arizona, to fight, for our country, just like I've done all my life as a prosecutor or as a soldier in the U.S. Army Reserve. So, I'm really excited for the opportunity. And I think right now, with the media coming at me and, the ruling class coming at me, they're scared, and they should be, because I don't play by the rules. When I take that oath of office, I take it only to the United States Constitution and the Constitution of Arizona, and I serve the people of Arizona. I don't serve the special interests. And I think people are going to recognize that fearless fighter. I've gotten this far in my life because I've got a backbone, I've got courage, and they're going to see that when I take office as well.
To wrap up the interview, forks up or bear down?
I guess it depends what sport. Maybe with my brother-in-law, he played basketball at ASU, so maybe that's be a forks up, and then maybe with football, it'll be a bear down. But luckily, I can cheer them both on.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Abe.
Thank you.